So Sharon Fekete is back on Palm Harbor Local. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah,
It's an
third
honor.
third time's a charm.
I love it.
Not that the other episodes weren't good, but it's always good to connect with you.
Mm, ditto.
So you are, for anybody that hasn't listened to any of Sharon's previous episodes, one, pause this one, go back and listen to them now. But you're an author, Broken Road to Mental Health in Life and Business. You're an
Yeah.
owner, founder of The Doctor Whisperer,
Mhm.
an owner, founder of 13th Ave Media,
Yes.
and now you're a public speaker,
Yes. A keynote speaker.
a keynote speaker.
Yes. 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 A keynote speaker. Yeah. And I actually dissolved the Dr. Whisperer. So
Oh, did
that's
you?
something new.
Okay.
Yeah. I quietly do things. I don't, some people
Yeah.
like to make big announcements.
Yeah.
I just go, you know what? I think I'm going to dissolve this. So I'm a DBA. Like I'll always be the Dr. Whisperer.
Yeah.
I have a podcast called The Doctor Whisperer, but I don't go in and restructure medical practices anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're just speaking.
We're just speaking, consulting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like it too.
You enjoy it much more?
If I was to paint my design for my business right now, it would be to do my podcast because I really do enjoy the conversations. They're so
Mm-hmm.
rich and
Mm-hmm.
fulfilling. And speaking because then I can help more people instead of one-on-one. I'd rather reach the masses versus trying to just help one person at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But if we help one person, it's all worth it.
Right. Is that where the idea to start speaking came from? Just to reach more people, make a bigger impact?
Well, of course, I did a vision board, Donnie. Doesn't everybody do a vision board
Not
at the end of the
everybody.
year? Well, it's very intentional. So the work that I'm doing is very intentional. And at the end of December, it was actually on December 31st, 2022, I did a vision board because it was raining. So I was like, maybe I'll do a vision board.
And you've
And
never done one before?
no, I had done one in rehab. So,
Okay.
like you said before, if you want to know about the rehab thing, go back to the other episodes
Yeah. Or read the book.
or read the book.
Yeah.
But it's a big thing in the recovery community to
Okay.
do that. So, I mean, I'm 51 next month, and I was 19, I think, the last time I did it. So I just made a vision board of what I wanted, and it was all about speaking about mental health in the workplace.
Okay.
And it felt very intentional. And so I set the intention, and then as a result, that's what happened.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it works.
Oh, it works.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have a vision board. I've dabbled in it, I say,
Oh, I love that.
because I put mine on my phone actually.
Mm,
So I can always kind of look at it, right?
yeah.
But or I took a picture of it. Like I created a vision board and then took a picture of it's on
Nice.
my home screen, whatever. But um, the visualization part has always been like I think kind of a challenge, right? You
Yeah.
just kind of find your groove and do what works best for you.
Mhm.
But I definitely think they help.
Well, I wrote a chapter about manifesting,
Yeah.
and I don't just think it works. I know it does,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a practice. Everything is a practice.
Mm-hmm.
So if I really want to be intentional about the work that I'm doing, I have to not only speak it, I have to see it and visualize it.
Mm-hmm.
So putting it out on paper and putting images along with it and speaking about it and then doing it,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really question that method,
Yeah.
especially if it's come to fruition. But you have to be intentional about wanting to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you back it up with doing all the work.
The work. Yeah.
Work.
The
That
hard stuff.
yes.
Yeah. So, so I brought you on here, when we talked the other day,
Mhm.
like the idea was, we all know somebody who is battling some sort of mental health
Mhm.
struggle, anxiety, depression, whatever it is. I feel
Mhm.
like everybody knows somebody,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And whether we know it or not, but so let's start off with, my thought was, how do we interact with those people, and how do we interact them to help them kind of, improve their lives or whatever it is, or kind of, is there anything that we can do to kind of support them and be there for them?
Yes. That's, the first answer is
Yeah.
yes. I was asked this morning if I really thought that there was such a thing as suicide prevention. So why don't we start there?
Okay.
Because that just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yes. But along with that very heavy topic, there comes a lot of creating spaces for people to feel comfortable
Mm.
having those kind of conversations. So I believe that everything is preventable, but you have to be able to be vulnerable enough and maybe expose some of your own shortcomings, character defects, um, hard times in your life in order for somebody to feel comfortable to tell you that they're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you can imagine, Donnie, most people don't have a problem telling me that
Yeah.
they're struggling, right? Because I've created that by talking about my own life.
Yeah.
And I think that if more people could consider what that could do for somebody else, it wouldn't be so difficult to not only approach somebody that might be struggling, but for them to come to you and approach
When they
you
are.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, there's no other way except to be vulnerable. And I never really thought I was ever going to say that. But in all of the conversations that I've had, there has been one that has been consistent, and that is that people feel safe talking to me.
Mm.
So why is that? And
Mm-hmm.
it's only because I've created that vulnerable space for somebody else. And somebody might not have that story like mine. I hope you don't.
Right.
But you could, everybody has had challenges.
Right.
Everybody. I mean, just the pandemic alone was a challenge. So, how did we feel going through the pandemic? What was that like? Was there anybody that you could talk to? Did you feel stress at your job? Did you feel stress about going back to work in an office or a remote? So, I think that if you're not willing to speak about something that's challenging, people are not going to feel safe around you.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're just talking about your successes all the time, nobody
Why would they come to
why would
you?
they come to
Right.
you, Don,
Yeah.
you know? And I try to, relate the same thing to when people want me to call, maybe it's a talk or a keynote, something with wellness built into it. Yes, that is the ultimate goal, but that is not why people want to come to a talk if they're struggling or
Mm.
to have a session with somebody if they're struggling. If you paint it too pretty and you wrap it in a big old luxury bow,
Mm.
that's not how somebody that's struggling is feeling. So we have to think about the person that is struggling in the moment.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of reminds me like, so uh I have two young girls,
Yeah.
and in raising them to try to be, um emotionally intelligent,
Mhm.
and being okay with like feeling their feelings, sort of thing. My wife is she listens to a couple of different podcasts and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff, and she shared one with me the other day, and they were talking about, or it's just like creating that space, like where it's okay for them to be upset and have feelings and all that kind of stuff, like, and you're just there to acknowledge that and let
Mhm.
them know that, when you want to talk, like, we're here for you whenever
Yep.
you're ready. So it kind of reminds me of that. And then that transitions to, when they're in their teen years or later on in life, that they feel okay, that when they're struggling with something, they feel
Mhm.
okay coming back to you and sharing their thoughts with you.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes parents, if we're gonna go down that road, which is a good road to be on,
Mm-hmm.
because it's broken sometimes,
Yep.
I think that if the parents don't show that there's going to be challenges and they're always trying to hide things from their kids about how they grew up,
Yeah.
they're not going to want to tell you either because they don't think that anything went wrong. They think that you just were, Donnie, the realtor
Yeah.
that, is killing it and has a podcast.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity for, I'll give you an example. My parents used to hire a babysitter when they fought. And my parents to this day, well, my mother especially, not so much my dad because he's struggling with dementia, but she would say, when we fought, we used to hire a babysitter. She would tell me that very proudly because she didn't want to fight in front of us.
Mm.
And although that was very nice, that did not show us what reality is.
Right.
So reality is arguing. Arguing doesn't mean you don't love somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Arguing means that you want to get to a resolution. So hiding it isn't always the best thing to do. It's let me show you that it is okay to be upset, angry, happy, joyous, free.
Yeah.
Let me show you what that looks like instead of just telling. I think that we're at the place now with raising children is such a different ball game, right? They see so much more now, and thank goodness they're more encouraged to speak openly about mental health or
Mhm.
understanding what is more important. But I do think that if we don't create that in our own home, don't be surprised. You
Yeah.
know, we always hear about how surprised people are when they lose somebody to suicide,
Mhm.
especially the successful. We talked about this once before. And there's no surprise to me that those people didn't feel safe having that conversation. And so nobody was willing to ask you the question, are you struggling?
Mhm.
Are you having a hard time? And do you want me to just listen or do you want me to help you find a solution?
Mhm.
Those are two very different questions.
Yeah. And that makes
S-
sense too, right? And like the family that seems to have it all together,
Mhm.
right? And then one of them doesn't, right? It's they've created that space where everything is perfect
Yeah.
and we don't talk about anything if it's not,
Right.
right?
Don't tell the neighbors.
Yeah. Right.
Don't show anybody.
Yeah.
You still have to show up looking good. And we do
Mhm.
the same thing in business.
Yeah. Yeah.
When there's struggle inside of an office or something bad is happening, why not have an open discussion about it?
Where do you think that where does that come from? Like is that just the generations before, like that was just kind of the way it was and now there's been a more, because of social media, maybe there's more focus on what people are feeling and kind of going through?
Well, I would like to think that there is more going on, Donnie.
Yeah.
There isn't in what I have been exposed to. So we talked about this example in the industry that you're in. I know somebody that knows somebody that died by suicide, and then the following Monday, they had a client event. So that right there is a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity. Okay, have the client event, but before you have the client event, you have an opportunity to have a very uncomfortable conversation. Yes,
Mhm.
I know it's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Nobody knows it better than me. But you will get closer to the people that you work with when you don't pretend things aren't happening.
Mhm.
I think we're all tired of pretending things aren't happening. We've gone through so much, and think about how much we've gone through. We just had a hurricane not too long ago. It feels like months ago, but it was just last month,
Right.
not even
Yeah.
a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
But that's how we're almost getting programmed as human beings to just the next trauma, the next tragedy, and it's
Just
so
move on.
overwhelming. Just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, you mentioned something too. Something I've been trying to be more intentional about is just being myself, like when I
Yeah.
post on social media,
Yes.
right? And just not worrying about, well, I don't like the way that sounded, or it
Right.
didn't come out right,
Mhm.
or I'm just going to share this thought, and if it
Yeah.
resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yep.
Um, it's easier that way too. Like
Ugh,
if you
so
just
easy.
stop worrying about what everyone else is thinking, right? Like once I've
Yes.
done that, um, it's still a work in progress, but once I've done that, it's just like, yeah, it's it. I feel
Yeah.
good. It's done. I don't have to
Right.
worry about it.
And I like to say when somebody talks about what other people are thinking about is that really nobody's thinking about you.
Right.
We think people are thinking about us,
Yeah.
but they're really thinking about themselves,
Yeah.
you know?
Which is the craziest part.
Yeah, selfish, self-centered, and self-seeking. That's
Mhm.
mostly, unfortunately, the way of the world, and I know a lot of people that are very unselfish and very giving. We just lost Katie McGill from Dress for Success, who was the executive director, who her whole life was based on service. There's not a lot of people out there that really just give, give, and give. And then we talk really well about them when they die, but we should be talking better about everybody when they're still here.
Mhm.
And you being more authentic and real just on social media is giving somebody else an opportunity to do that too.
Mhm.
It's not even like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have, what will they think? It's really like, oh wow, if Donnie can do it,
Mhm.
I should
Mhm.
probably try that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Why is it so hard to be ourselves, right? Just to
Yeah,
is
that's
it
a
like
good question.
that vulnerability? Like just you're afraid of going back to like what other people are gonna think and say? Like,
Yeah, well, it's very easy to talk about stuff that is a struggle after it's over.
mm,
It's much more difficult to talk about a struggle when you're in it because then the perception is, oh no, and what will everybody think? But you've gotten through it and now you want to talk about it way easier than being in it. That's why authentic, real, vulnerable discussions and even posting on social media are that's why it's such a big attraction. That's why those videos go viral because those people are literally just in front of a camera being who they are
mm-hmm,
and just letting it all go. That is what everybody wants. And it's amazing how we think, let me make sure everything is right before I say it or do it, where it's the opposite that what people want.
mm-hmm,
My own vulnerability has been my greatest asset. But when I am having a hard time in the middle of crying about something, whatever it might be, whether it be a struggle about my family or what's going on with the world, I don't necessarily want to take a camera out
right.
and start talking about it. But be sure to know that if you called me and asked me how I was doing at that moment, I'm going to tell you
Mm-hmm,
I'm not doing well.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Your your journey of becoming vulnerable to everyone else and telling your story. Um, how did you come to that? Like, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm gonna be.
Mm.
Like, what was that process like for you?
There's so many little things that happen.
Yeah.
So I won't bore you with all of them. But I will tell you that as somebody who worked with these professionals, I think a lot of people were under this misconception that I myself had not gone through anything. Because here I was working with, a surgeon and a physician, and I was going to all these fancy events. And I was dressed and there was makeup on and I was put together.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was finding when I was especially working within these practices and helping to restructure them, that I had the great advantage of being able to have one-on-ones with the staff. So it was always what I wanted to do. Go in, ask the staff these questions. I would ask them the same 5 questions I've always asked since I was in my 20s working at New York Medical. And I would ask this one question. It was just, how do you like to be rewarded? It's a simple question.
Yeah.
Very difficult question, I find, for people to answer. And maybe you would think, I know that my doctor clients thought it was a bad question to ask because they were afraid they would have to give everybody more
More
money.
money. Yeah.
But the truth is that everybody just wanted to be thanked,
Mm.
recognized, somebody say hello to me, not point out all the things that I did wrong, but maybe point out one of the things that I did right. So when you start hearing that everywhere you go, and it's the same, it doesn't matter, I would be asked, we have to create a better culture here. Almost impossible if you are not at the beginning of setting the stage for when somebody walks into your corporation to have these kinds of conversations that are real and vulnerable and
Mm-hmm.
not even vulnerable, but like, what do you want as a human being as you are working here for my
Yeah.
company? And how can we help you get to where you want to go? Those things don't always happen. So what I'm trying to get to here, I have no idea, Donnie.
You're
But why I started to talk about it, I remember now.
yeah.
There were a few incidents where a few people in my life, as friends in business, were losing loved ones to suicide, to overdosing.
Mm.
And I started to feel like a fraud
Mm.
because I had all of this design for living, I call it, this recovery, this support that I just said one day, I'm just going to start telling people.
Mm.
And when I started sharing it, then it was just amplified. There was so many people that were struggling or that had a family member or a sister or brother, and they would come to me and ask me questions. And I thought, you know what, if I really took advantage of the opportunity I have 25 years later, which that's how long I was sober when I wrote the book, to tell that story now, maybe people would see hope in me. And
Mhm.
that's really what I wanted. I
Mm.
wanted somebody to know that you could go through really, really hard times. You could rebuild your whole life if you did so much work
Yeah.
to get to that place where you could feel good again. So it was a lot of just watching really bad things happening in business that made me understand that the reason that some of these leaders in organizations are maybe yelling at people in the workplace is not because the employees suck.
Mm. Yeah.
It's because they haven't done their own personal development
Mhm.
or they haven't done their own healing, and they're just bringing and throwing trauma bombs at everybody
Your
without even
trauma bond.
knowing, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Uh,
yeah, I mean, it was, just a decision to show somebody else hope.
yeah. And that's all it is, like, being vulnerable, right? It's just
Yeah,
like, "Hey, we're all in this together.
yeah,
We're going through the same shit.
mhm.
Let's
Yes,
let's do it."
yes.
What is, for a lot of the people on here, are, we're supporting the small business communities. Like,
Yes.
obviously, we talk to all the small business owners and stuff. Like, if there's somebody on here that's listening and be like, man, I need to take a look at my business and, see if I'm creating that culture
Mhm.
for, to be vulnerable and to create that space. What's like a tip or maybe a starting point or something they can do to instill in their, business to create that culture?
There's a lot of options. I think one of the best options is to encourage some type of support system for their staff. So whether that's thinking about an employee assistance program is always the first one that comes to mind because that's what helped me.
Hmm.
The literal reason that I am talking to you today is because my father's EAP, employee assistance program, was available. And
Okay.
that person asked me if I was having suicidal thoughts. I was 21. Yes. So full circle, right? Full
Yeah.
circle to now.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for my father's job, his daughter wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
That's
Crazy.
crazy, right?
Right.
I love that full circle moment. So, but not every small business can afford an employee assistance program. There's so many things you can do. There's how many apps are out there,
Right.
right? But not just an app, but maybe we decide to just have a conversation or we appoint somebody as an ambassador that's in the organization that can get certified by USF, which is right here in Tampa,
Oh, cool.
about workplace wellness and how to talk about mental health in the workplace. So they go through this course. I've done it myself,
Hmm.
and they could learn how to be better advocates for somebody's mental health. So when somebody has their head down or they're not showing up every Monday and they're coming up with another excuse on Monday why they can't come in,
Yeah.
that somebody, instead of chastising them, maybe they could just ask them if everything's okay. Because it's not, human resources is not built to be a therapist.
Right.
Human resources is for policies and procedures, and they have their own, they're legal that they have to deal with. It's not the same, but human resources could be a part of it if they decided to get some kind of training. It's much more practical than I think most people consider. I'll tell you what does not work. Never talking about mental health
Mm.
does not work.
Imagine that.
So, my brother in New York, he's been at the same company for 16 years. We go through the pandemic. I'm doing all these keynotes. I can't believe that people aren't talking about this.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, what, really? Like, nobody's asked you how you're doing
Yeah.
after the pandemic or in it or during it? Or so I asked my brother, different state, right? I said, what's going on there? So when I asked him, what have they done in terms of talking about mental health? And he started laughing. And I find that's what everybody does. What do you mean? Nobody's talking about that here
Yeah.
at work.
Yeah.
Nobody's asking me how I'm doing. And, I'm never going to tell HR how I'm doing. Are you kidding? What if they write me up? What if they put it in my, folder? So there's so much like
Mm.
secrecy and there's so much, you know, don't talk about that. So if we're not talking about it at home,
Yeah.
and then we're not talking about it at work, how are we gonna normalize the conversation?
Yeah. And that's where it starts, right? It starts in the home.
Yeah, you hope.
And then the leaders that are the leaders of those organizations,
Yeah.
they're talking about their home and then they take it to their workplace.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
And it's slow, and, there is
Right.
hope. It's moving in that direction, but it's also if the leaders are struggling themselves, it's going to be very difficult for them to think it's okay to bring in some kind of help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Because then they get, quote unquote, exposed at that point, right? That they're struggling
Yes.
too.
Yes.
What do you What do you think changes it? Is it just talking about it more, or is there something else, or is it a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. I think talking about it is probably the best free remedy any employer could implement today.
Yeah.
If something happens in the world, say there's a mass shooting, and you have children that you have to put in school, imagine how comforting it would be if an employer decided that instead of just buying lunch for the staff that day, which is lovely,
Mm-hmm.
that they just sat down at the table with everybody and
Mm.
said, "Hey, I just thought I would tell you how I was feeling when I heard about that and keep it short." And before you know it, everybody is sharing something.
Mm-hmm.
And then it creates that safe, courageous environment for people to talk about it. But if the leader is not doing that, it's not going to be good for them, especially in 2023 going into a new year. You know, a lot of the younger generations are going to really insist upon having employers that are taking care of people's mental health,
Right.
encouraging some type of a benefit, and maybe having some kind of a support. So there's so many ways. It really just, chat GPT at employers. What is the best free remedy in the state of Florida or whatever state you're in, or right here in Palm Harbor to encourage this? There are so many ways to do it, but there has to be somebody willing. Willing is the biggest word. Has to be a willingness in order for people to be brave enough to, I don't know, save somebody's life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because in the workplace, it does matter. Some people I think in business are like, well, it's not what we're here for. We're here to do business. But we're doing business with human beings.
Right. Everything's boiled down to a relationship, a person.
That's it.
Yeah.
And how they're feeling and how they're doing.
Yeah.
So when I ask somebody that I work with or that's working for me, how are you? I'm not actually waiting for my opportunity to talk.
Right.
I'm going to listen to what they have
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah. And what's crazy too, and I know we've talked about this before, but it's like when you create that space for your
Mhm.
employers and you create that culture, people want to come to work and will work harder, and for the leader, they're gonna make you more money, right, at the end of the day.
You
So
want
it's
to
like,
talk about retention.
yeah, there you go. We were just about training employees, right? Like, you don't have to worry about that because 'cause they're gonna
People,
stay.
yeah, people are just worried. They're
Yeah.
worried that they're going to lose their job, or they're just worried in general. This world is not the same. So why are
Mhm.
we keeping everything so secretive? That's how I feel. Like, why aren't we just what is so hard about talking about it? That's the question everybody has to ask themselves. Why is it so difficult for me to just communicate the truth?
Yeah.
What's going to happen to me if I expose some type of
Flaw.
vulnerability
Yeah.
here? Yeah, that I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I love the opportunity to tell somebody that because I know how it helps somebody.
Yeah.
So if more people realize how much it helps, my goodness, the changes that we can make. But if you want not only to recruit talent, because there's so many people that won this Bell Seal Award. It is you can win it's like a certification that
Okay.
your company is open to talking about mental health in the workplace, and this is a safe place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. Who knew, right? And they have to fill out these really big surveys to get that seal. It's a huge seal. Now, if you're getting the seal and you're not following through with that, that's like saying that you're, open to LGBTQ and not really being that.
Mhm.
You have to be more than a hashtag today.
Right, right, right.
I think that people are getting more hip to that. We really want to have some kind of an open dialogue and what does it really look like? And for kids today, kids, in your 30s or 40s, nobody's gonna stay for 20 years like our parents stayed at
Right.
jobs.
Right.
Those days are over.
Yeah.
If you're not going to make these changes, and these changes will keep people. They
Mhm.
will keep people. Alyssa's been with me for 5 years. It's not like she's making a ton of money.
Right.
I mean, she's living a great life, and she's happy. But if happy people working in these places will stay, but if you're not willing to have the conversations, they're gonna go.
Yep.
That's a fact, Jack.
That's it.
Yeah.
Um, well, always fun chatting with you.
Oh, you too.
Is
I
there
love
anything
what you're doing.
Yeah, appreciate that. Is there anything else you wanna say on this topic today? And
Yeah, for maybe just for fun, Donnie,
yeah, just for fun.
just for fun. I am doing these keynotes about mental health in the workplace. And when I sign the contract and then they come back to me and say, we want to change the title because we don't think that mental health is a draw. Now
Mm,
those are the words that I've heard more than once. I want people to know that that is so insulting, but it is also the biggest problem that we have.
yeah.
I can promise you right now, those two words, mental and health, are not bad words. I'm talking about your health, not even illness. I'm saying mental health.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with it. If you're having an issue, if you're depressed, if you're have anxiety, if you're having a panic attack, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you're struggling through some mental health issues.
Yeah.
And I can promise you, 90% of the people in your organization are struggling today. So if people don't want to say those two words, there is a bigger problem in your organization, and it is the decision makers. So if the top is not willing to have this conversation, I am at this point now, I'm already pretty honest, Donnie.
Yeah.
That's the problem with me.
Yeah.
I will go straight to the point. I will start calling it out. I don't, it's not worth it anymore to lose somebody or to know of somebody that I know of right now that, had a panic attack because they hate their job so much.
Mhm.
It's not that important.
Right. Right.
Everybody should be taking care of their mental health before they're taking care of what's going into their bank account. I get it. It's important, but it's
Yeah.
not more important than our mental health
Right. And it's almost like the reason that it's not a big draw at those companies is because they're not open to talking about it.
because they have a problem.
Right. Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, the company
Because,
does. Yeah.
yeah. And they know that.
Right.
So if they expose it, they're going to be hypocrites.
Yeah.
Here they are leading a conference, right? And they're going to do this mental health in the workplace. And they have the most toxic environment
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
It's just when I get the no, I'm like, oh, toxic workplace. Perfect. Got it. Got
Yeah.
your number.
Crazy.
Let's change it to something that makes you feel more comfortable. But I'm still
Yeah.
going to talk about it because
Yeah.
that's how we normalize it. Forget about that word stigma. This is like so old. It's so 2020. Let's talk about normal conversations now.
Yeah.
This is very normal. You feel comfortable, Donnie?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
talking about good stuff. Donnie and I have gotten closer because we've been able to have conversations like this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's what
Exactly.
happens
Yeah.
when you could be real with somebody else.
Yeah.
How refreshing.
Yeah. That was like our first conversation. That's what I remember. It was like,
Yeah.
we're just, you're honest. And I think that's one of the things you said to me in the beginning was like, I'm just going to tell you like it is. And,
That's it.
and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I wish there were more out there like you.
Yeah. There are.
Yeah, there are.
There are.
There actually are. There's a lot of great people that are doing a lot of great things. I don't
Yeah.
want this to be so, negative, especially about corporate. There are a lot of great companies doing great things.
Absolutely.
We just need more,
Right.
especially here
Everybody
in
needs
Tampa
to be
Bay.
doing that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Well, thanks again.
Thank you, Donnie.